Why does India, a country that does not produce much oil, have to hold billions of US dollars in reserve just to survive? Why can India not simply pay for oil in rupees? The answer goes back 50 years to a deal so powerful it still controls your petrol price, your LPG cylinder, and your grocery bill today. Imagine this. You are the owner of a small shop in Mumbai. Every morning you wake up, open your shop and sell your goods. You earn rupees. You pay your supplies in rupees. You pay your rent in rupees. Everything makes sense. Now imagine one day a rule changes. Suddenly you can only buy your raw materials in US dollars, not rupees, dollars. So now every morning before you can even open your shop, you first have to go and convert your rupees into dollars. And every time the dollar gets stronger, your costs go up. Every time the rupee falls, your profits shrink. You had nothing to do with America. You never asked for this rule, but you are bound by it anyway. This is exactly what happens to India and almost every country in the world every single day. And it all comes down to one system, that is petrodollar. So what exactly is the petrodollar? Here is the simplest way to understand it. Oil runs the world. Every factory, every vehicle, every power plant, almost everything that moves or generates energy needs oil. And since 1974, every barrel of oil sold anywhere in the world has been priced and traded in one currency, the US dollar. Not the British pound, not the Japanese yen, not the Indian rupee, the dollar. This means if Japan wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, Japan pays in dollars. If India wants to buy oil from Iraq, India pays in dollars. If Germany wants to buy oil from Russia, Germany pays in dollars. The nationality of neither the buyer nor the seller matters. Oil equals dollars always everywhere. Now here is where it gets really interesting. If every country in the world needs oil and oil can only be bought in dollars, then every country in the world permanently needs dollars. That is the entire architecture of American financial power in a single sentence. Think about what that means. American can print dollars. No other country can print dollars. So every country that needs oil, which is every country on earth, is permanently dependent on America's currency. This is what economists call the petrodollar system, and it is arguably the most powerful financial arrangement in human history. But wait, how did that happen? How did America manage to make the entire world price oil in its own currency? To understand that, we need to go back, way back to a mountain resort in New Hampshire in the summer of 1944. But to understand the petrodollar, we need to go back in time, way back. For most of our modern history, every currency in the world was backed by actual physical gold. $1, a fixed amount of gold in a vault. £1, a fixed amount of gold in a vault. You could not just print money out of thin air. Every note had gold behind it. Simple, stable, honest. This was called the gold standard, and for decades it worked beautifully. But then came two world wars. Government needed to spend far more than their gold reserves allowed. They started printing money beyond what they could back. The gold standard began to crack. The world needed a new system.
World War II is still raging. But the leaders of the free world are already asking one question. When this war ends, what kind of financial world do we build? 730 delegates from 44 nations gathered at a mountain resort in New Hampshire, USA. Their mission, design a brand new global financial system from scratch. And what they agreed changed everything. Every currency in the world would be pegged to the US dollar at a fixed exchange rate, and the dollar itself would be backed by gold at exactly $35 per ounce. Why the dollar? Because America held 3/4 of all the gold in the entire world at that time. Think about that. 3/4. Every other country combined held just 1/4. The choice was obvious. The dollar became the anchor of the entire global financial system. Every country needed dollars. Every country trusted dollars. Because dollars meant gold, and gold meant real value. This system, called the Bretton Woods system, worked brilliantly for almost 30 years. Global trade boomed, economies recovered. The post-war era became one of the greatest periods of economic growth in human history, but there was one condition. America had to be responsible. It could not print more dollars than it had gold to back. Because any country could walk up to America at any time and say, "Here are your dollars, give us gold." And America had promised it would honor that, but then America broke that promise.
Picture this. It is a hot summer evening, August 15th, 1971. Millions of Americans are sitting in front of their television sets. Nixon appears on screen. They expect him to talk about the Vietnam War or the economic, normal presidential stuff, but what Nixon says next, nobody saw coming. He announces that America is suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold. In plain English, America is breaking its promise to the world. Remember that promise? Any country could walk up to America and say, "Here are your dollars, give us gold." America had guaranteed it. That guarantee, the bedrock of the entire global financial system, was gone just like that, in a 5-minute television address. The world woke up the next morning in a complete shock. But here is what most people do not know about that moment. America did not just stumble into this crisis. Through the 1960s, America was spending money it simply did not have. The Vietnam War alone cost over $800 billion in today's money. The space race, massive welfare programs at home, President Johnson's Great Society. America was printing dollars like there was no tomorrow, far more than its gold reserves could back. France was the first to smell something wrong. President Charles de Gaulle stood up publicly and said, "America is exporting its inflation to the rest of the world. We want our gold back." He literally sent French warships across the Atlantic to collect French gold from American walls. Britain followed, Germany followed, Switzerland followed. America's gold was walking out of the door at an alarming speed. Nixon had no choice. Close the gold window, break the promise, save the dollar. But here is the problem that kept American policymakers awake at night after the broadcast. If the dollar is no longer backed by gold, why would any country in the world want to hold dollars? Why would Japan hold dollars? Why would India hold dollars? Why would Saudi Arabia hold dollars? Without gold, the dollar was just paper. America needed something else to back the dollar, something the entire world needed, something no country could live without. They found the answer in one word: oil. So America had a problem. The dollar was no longer backed by gold, and without gold, why would any country in the world hold dollars? America needed a new answer fast, and that answer came from a man named Henry Kissinger. Kissinger was Nixon's Secretary of State, one of the world's most powerful and cunning diplomats in American history. And in 1974, he flew to Saudi Arabia with a proposition that could reshape the entire world. Here is what he offered. America would provide Saudi Arabia with military protection, weapons, security guarantees. America's full military might stand behind Saudi royal family. In return, Saudi Arabia would do two things. First, price off its oil exclusively in US dollars. Second, take the billions of dollars it earned from oil sales and invest them back into US Treasury bonds. King Faisal agreed, and just like that, the petrodollar was born. Within a year, every single OPEC member had followed Saudi Arabia's lead. All oil everywhere in the world was now priced in dollars. The genius of this arrangement was breathtaking. America had replaced gold with oil. Instead of backing the dollar with a metal sitting in a vault, it backed the dollar with the world's most essential commodity, something every country on earth needed every single day. And Kissinger had a name of what happened next: petrodollar recycling. Saudi Arabia and OPEC were now earning hundreds of billions of dollars more than they could even spend at home. So they invested those dollars back into America, into US Treasury bonds, US banks, and US financial markets. America's money was flowing out to buy oil and then flowing straight back in as investment. It was the most elegant financial arrangement in history, and it solved America's problem. Now let us bring this to India. India is the world's third largest oil consumer, and India imports over 85% of the crude oil it needs. Every single rupee India spends on that oil has to first be converted into dollars. Think about what that means. When the dollar gets stronger, India's oil bill goes up. Not because oil prices changed, not because India used more oil, simply because the exchange rate moved. When the rupee falls against the dollar, which it has been doing for decades, Indian fuel prices rise, petrol prices rise, LPG cylinder prices rise, transport costs rise. And because transport costs affect everything that moves, food prices rise, manufacturing costs rise, inflation rises. This is why your petrol price in India is not just determined by oil supply and demand, it is determined in large part by the strength of the US dollar. And here is the bigger picture. India needs to hold billions of US dollars in reserve just to have enough to pay for oil imports. That money is sitting in dollar assets, often US Treasury bonds, earning relatively low returns. In 2024 and 2025, India's oil import bill was over $150 billion per year, $150 billion every year flowing out of India into the petrodollar. Here is the part of this story that makes people uncomfortable. Because history suggests that challenging the petrodollar system comes with very serious consequences. In the year 2000, Saddam Hussein announced that Iraq would sell its oil in euros instead of dollars. He wanted to break free from the petrodollar. In 2003, America invaded Iraq. Saddam was removed from power and eventually executed. After the invasion, Iraqi oil sales reverted immediately back to dollars. Now, the official reason for the Iraq invasion was weapons of mass destruction, which were never found. The connection to the Europe oil switch is disputed and not proven, but the timing is something historians have been discussing ever since. Then there was Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. Gaddafi had a more ambitious plan. He wanted to create a pan-African gold-backed currency, the gold dinar. The African nations could use to sell their oil instead of dollars. Libya had 144 tons of gold to back it. In 2011, NATO forces intervened in Libya's civil war. Gaddafi was killed. The gold dinar plan died with him. Hillary Clinton's leaked email, later released by the State Department, mentioned Gaddafi's gold dinar plan as one of the factors that influenced Western decision-making on Libya. Was the petrodollar the real reason for these interventions? That is a question historians and analysts still debate today. The evidence is of course circumstantial but not conclusive, but the pattern is one that the world has. Fast forward to today. For the first time in 50 years, the petrodollar system faces a serious challenge. It started with Russia. After Western sanctions following the Ukraine war, Russia was cut off from the dollar system. So Russia started selling oil to India and China in rubles and yuan, bypassing dollars entirely. India seized this opportunity. India began buying Russian oil at a massive discount, paying in rupees and UAE dirhams instead of dollars. Then Saudi Arabia, the very country that built the petrodollar system with America in 1974, started making noise. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Saudi Arabia's finance minister said the kingdom is open to trading oil in currencies other than dollar. And the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India and China, South Africa, began seriously discussing an alternative payment system. The BRICS bridged a blockchain-based platform that would allow countries to settle trade in their own digital currencies, bypassing SWIFT and bypassing the dollar entirely. As of 2024, the US dollar still accounts for 59% of global foreign exchange reserves, down from 71% in year 2000. The decline is real, but it is slow and there is no credible replacement. So what does all of this mean for India specifically? India is actually in a fascinating position right now. On one hand, India signed a trade deal with America in February, agreeing to halt purchases of Russian oil in exchange for lower US tariffs. India moved back toward the dollar system. On the other hand, the Reserve Bank of India has been quietly building the infrastructure for rupee-based international trade. India signed agreements with the UAE to trade in rupees. India and Malaysia began settling trade in rupees. The RBI proposed linking the digital currencies of the BRICS nations. India is effectively playing both sides, and that is actually a smart position, because here's the truth about the petrodollar's future that most analysts agree on. It will not collapse suddenly. There will be no single dramatic moment where the world abandons the dollar overnight. Instead, what we are seeing is a low, gradual shift from a world where 100% of oil is priced in dollars to a world where perhaps 70 or 80% is, where some oil is priced in yuan, some in rupees, some in digital currencies. A multipolar financial world where the dollar is still the most important currency, but no longer the only one. And in that world, India's massive economy, its growing influence and its strategic position between America and BRICS could make the rupee one of the key alternative currencies of the 21st century.